Howdy, Sox fans. Welcome back to Good Guys Talk Back, episode 227. I am Nick Murawski. This is a fan-centric Chicago White Sox podcast. You can find us absolutely everywhere. We are doing this on our YouTube channel. Try to do these live shows on Sunday night. You can find previous episodes over there. Just subscribe and do all that fun stuff. The audio version everywhere on Twitter and all that good stuff we'll get to later. I don't want to waste too much of your time because we've got this exciting ball club to talk about as they wrapped up the first half of the season. With me, as always, my dear friend, lifelong White Sox fan, Pat Hester. Hello, sir.
Nick, anybody can have a slow start, right? It's a start. It's a slow start, just a little sluggish. We can turn this thing around. Things are going to be fantastic when we get Moncada back. We got some starting pitchers that are going to be coming off the IL very soon. You know, a lot of positive momentum as we head into the break. You know, and those injured players coming back is like a trade, like as if you made a trade. So just adding those pieces back to this roster next should be no problem, and start alerting the rest of the American League as far as I'm concerned.
Alert them that many players are available and line up and get your pickings. Sox are 38-54. 38-54 heading into the All-Star break. 16 games under 500, 8 games back in the division. They really were dragged to the break here. Lost a series to the St. Louis Cardinals. It's embarrassing in my mind. It's just absolutely embarrassing. There's a lot of things to unpack, but I think ultimately we'll get to the same conclusion. This is the second worst record at the break since the rebuild started in December of 2016. The worst record at the break came from that 100-loss season in 2018. So that was to be expected. They were built to lose 100 games, and they did lose 100 games, and they were bad at the break. This was not supposed to happen here in 2023, but here we are. Pat, since the last time we talked, the Sox were swept by the Blue Jays, and they lost 2 of 3 from the Cardinals. You were at that doubleheader game, weren't you?
I did. I showed up just in time for the end of game 1, and I saw it's what's amazing to me, Nick, is I sat there and watched the end of that game. It's amazing to me the different ways this team finds ways to lose, but at the same time, it's one team looking across the field and going, as long as we can put balls in play and put pressure on this team late, they will ultimately shoot themselves in the foot. I think that last inning, I was jokingly, I told the people around me, I think the exit velocity on the balls hit by the Blue Jays in that 11th inning might have been 50 miles an hour at the, at an average, or maybe the highest. A squiver down the line, another squiver past second base, a diving Elvis Andrus, I believe, 2 swinging bunts and 1 actual bunt to without an out recorded, which I think that was the case, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and Bummer might have gone a third of an inning.
And you know what? That's the thing about Bummer, man. I'm telling you, he hasn't been good. Let's just be honest with each other. He has not been good over the past 2 years, but he has got to have the worst luck in terms of guys just beating the ball into the ground. It ends up rolling out somewhere on the infield, and there's a play that cannot be made. I feel like every time he's in, that happens. So I'm not, no excuses, because he's been wild enough and walked enough guys over the past 2 years, but you can almost take that money to the bank. We really should be betting on that, like guys beating things into the ground off of Aaron Bummer.
It's his angle, right, of how he throws and the spin and the approach.
Which should be effective, right? Guys just beating stuff into the ground.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's the spin that it takes off, and it just like tunnels itself and it deadens, and you've got enough English on it, and guys can't handle it, or it stays fair, and no one thought it was going to stay fair. It was some hard luck, especially in that. But that is why you need wipeout stuff.
Yeah,
that's why you've got to have nasty stuff that nobody could even put in play. I mean, that's why the strikeout is obviously so important, and why guys with nasty stuff are coveted. Because we don't even want to deal with the ball being put in play, especially against a team like the White Sox. And that bunt, anytime a team bunts against the White Sox, it's like, what is that? What is that? What do we do with that? I don't know who covers what. It just looks like an absolute mess. And that was ugly. But the
Well,
Blue Jays are a good team.
they are a
And
good team.
they can hit, and they, once you think you've got them, they keep coming. With Merrifield, boy, I thought we were done with him during the Kansas City days. Vlad Jr., he can hit. It was just it's a sad state of affairs there, but you were at that for that doubleheader. So
Yeah, and the next game, again, you're tied up. You're in a lot of these games too, Nick. These weren't a lot of these games are not blowout losses by any means to, the Cardinals and the Blue Jays, both, in both of these series, the team was in it, but again, we're just not talented enough or good enough or strong-willed enough or, dare I say, managed well enough to get these wins that you really should get. Now, again, I don't know why I'm wringing my hands and gnashing my teeth about these losses at this point. I mean, it's a fait accompli about what's going to happen between now and the trade deadline. It's just like a matter of who is going to be traded, not, if they'll make trades. So I don't know why I get upset, but I'm almost looking at it as Pedro Grifol has really failed me and failed you and failed every White Sox fan. We were told that fundamentals would become, of an importance to this team. And you'd think, okay, maybe they're just not very good fundamentally, but I thought they'd be at least somewhat better, markedly better with some focus behind it. But they still don't run the bases very well. They still commit too many errors, whether it's mental errors or physical errors. And they just feel like they're not into the game. They just feel like they're going through the motions. And it hasn't just been recently since they really fell out of the division. Feels like it's been this way most of the year, where it's like, we'll go get them tomorrow, I guess. Where is that sense of urgency I thought we were getting with Pedro Grifol?
Yeah, the sense of urgency. He really sold me on that, on how April and May will matter so much. We will play every game like it counts. They matter just as much as in September. You might not be able to win the pennant, but you sure can lose it. And boy, did it look like they did with how they started 7-21.
Yeah.
The whole flush it by Grifol, the whole, well, we're just going to have to put on our uniform and worry about tomorrow. I guess that keeps you sane as a first-time manager from the Kansas City Royals organization. I don't know what that does for me and you as fans, or for the organization, or for the betterment of the players. Maybe that obviously is just lip service to all of us in post-game for some sort of soundbite. There has to be a different message that he's saying behind closed doors. If that is the same message, then that is jaw-droppingly horrible. I mean, there is no urgency. There's no plan. There's no way of getting better. I mean, the Sox are 29th in on-base percentage. Okay. We all know they don't take pitches. They don't draw walks. That string of home runs, they were all solo home runs because the Sox don't get on base. They have a miserable approach. And back in April, Grifol was asked about this by James Fegan with The Athletic at the time, back in April. And Grifol kind of was like, I get it, but this is a process. This takes time because this isn't just physical. It's mental. Guys need to, work on the discipline stuff. That was back in April. Mm-hmm. I haven't seen anything that has changed since. And now, is that just guys not buying into the system, or is that also guys that just cannot do what they're being asked to do?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of guys just can't do what they're being asked to do, and now it's gotten to the point where I think it's creeping in. Guys just don't flat out don't want to be here. And there was a lot of chatter this week on the radio that that I was listening to. It's like you gave out a lot of now bad contracts at the time when all these guys were signed up before they really got in the batter's box in a major league ball game. It's like they're giving out these long-term deals because you think, okay, you sign these guys up now, we're gonna put our chips in, which on guys that haven't really played the game yet, and sign them up now so we don't get to that the free agency discussion where we have to pay these guys big time in the long run. And you think, wow, that's some really forward thinking there by this organization, because you and I stupidly think, oh, if they've got this and they're signing their young guys to long-term deals and they're saving money on the front end and possibly on the back end, that opens up opportunities to fill in your gaps with some great, free agent talent that's there, and you can spend money there. They never did that. And oh, by the way, it backfired you big time, because the only person that seemingly have panned out from that group is Luis Robert. And at times he looks disinterested in the game, which it happens. I just don't know that he goes all out all the time. Fantastic, wonderfully talented player, going to the All-Star game, deservedly so, puts the ball in the seats all the time. That's great. But there are times where his mental lapses hurt him as well. So you're stuck now. You're stuck with some bad contracts. You're going to have to move some things. And the unfortunate thing is, how far down do you let it go or tear it down to rebuild it back up? How far do you let it go? Or are there enough pieces to you say, okay, maybe it's a retool situation rather than a full rebuild situation?
You're right on Luis Robert Jr. He's kind of like the lone bright spot right now, even though you and I think a lot of folks had the conversation of like, what is going on with this guy months ago?
Mm-hmm.
He looked clueless, absolutely clueless. I don't know. It sounds like he's got his own private hitting instructor. He has dialed into some stuff. I'm excited for the home run derby on Monday. I mean, he's got the swing for it. And this is the time to showcase yourself, Luis Robert Jr. Thankfully, somebody clued him in and said, psst, you're not going to get national attention with this team. They're not going to the postseason. You need to do it on your own. And if you're giving the opportunity to be in the Derby, take it, get your brand up there and do it. And I think he's going to go crazy in the first round. And, because he's got an opportunity, man. This is his time to shine. But, going back to the retool, rebuild, I think they're going to part ways with a lot of guys that are guys that are done after this year, or they just aren't willing to deal with. Like Giolito's gone. I mean, he's absolutely gone. It's not like I like it, and that's my decision. It's the way the White Sox do business with starting pitching. And the writing has been on the wall. Unless there's a complete turn of events, that's not going to happen. Giolito's gone. Lance Lynn, I think, is gone. I think there's going to be some relievers that are gone. And then you get to guys like Tim Anderson or Dylan Cease that the Sox have some control over. And unless there's teams that really offer a ton, and I'm talking a ton, like they've got to clear out their farm system probably for Dylan Cease, even though he's not really wowing anybody right now compared to last season, but you still look at his potential. Like that's a guy that I want on my staff long term. But Anderson's stock has plummeted grossly. It's like I don't even know what you're unless you're looking at just, I see the potential in a guy like Tim Anderson. We can afford Tim Anderson, and we want like what he could bring, and he just needs a change of atmosphere. But
yeah,
I mean, there's some pieces on this team, but then it's like, well, how do you go about business? How is the game being played the White Sox way at 35th and Shield? Who's making those decisions? Like what's the fundamental, program like top down? That's where I'm like, are new pieces going to really make a difference when the same folks are making the decisions, not only in the front office, but in the managerial world and bench coaches and hitting coaches and all that kind of stuff? There's just a lot of rot right now.
Yeah, unfortunately, Nick, for us as Sox fans, until Jerry Reinsdorf no longer owns this club, and whether it's he's moved on or sold the team or whatever it is, it's really going to continue this way, where it's going to be these pop-up once in a while successful years, and it's going to be back to this, right? Because he's going to continue to employ the guys that are in the position of making decisions, and he's going to put a really big clamp on what they can and can't do. And there's some rules there. These are how you play the rules. They know how to play the rules to keep themselves employed. We've talked about it ad nauseum. So I really don't see things changing. To talk about this team, having long-term success. Talk to me at the parades. We want to have sustainable, all this other BS that Han will talk about. It's really just, I wonder if he even believes what he says when he says those things, because
There's no way. There's
It's
no way.
almost laughable because you look at the way this organization is run and how they do things. It's just not up to par with the way sports teams are run in 2023 and going into 2024. You cannot be successful on the dime. And I had some family in it was my wife's family in from Vegas this past week, and we took them to the game on Saturday. And I was trying to tell them, because they don't have a team there yet. They don't have the A's there yet.
Yep.
So they kind of rooted. I think they're San Francisco fans, or
Okay.
maybe one in the family is this. And there's a guy that was a transplant. And he's a Detroit guy, and he's from he's a Tigers fan. And I was just trying to talk about what White Sox baseball is and what this tradition is. And I started talking about the things that you're proud of. And then I realized what we're proud of is we're proud of a groundskeeper. We're proud of a PA announcer. We were extremely proud of our organist for a long, long time. We've had some great announcers in the booth. We do some great giveaways. The food is fantastic. The ballpark has improved over years. All the things around what should be important, which is putting the best possible product in the field, is lacking. And it has lacked for a long time. But there's a lot of great things. But I'm rattling it off, and it's a joke. Yeah. Because what you should be saying is, oh, this person we had was a great player, and he should have his number retired soon. And this person, helped us to this playoff run. And this, you can point to very few things that you can be proud of in terms of actual bodies that contributed to wins.
A lot of sizzle, no steak. And you a few years ago were able to point out to the light towers out in the outfield beyond the concourse, and you were able to see some of the banners that they had displayed of division championships and when they won the pennant, and again, not a lot of advertisement, and of course the World Series banner that has been removed, and now it's hidden all the way beyond the left field seats on those brick columns, very small. You almost need binoculars to see the different things that have come the White Sox way in 120 plus years of playing. It's almost like they're embarrassed that this is all we have to show. So we're just going to put it on these little brick columns. It's truly sickening. And there's a lot of exploding scoreboard. And when Bill Veck, the first team to put last names on jerseys and all the different, the turn back the clock day in 1990, first team to do something like that. And but then you want to get down to the meat of it. And it's like, well, how many division championships you had lately and the World Series appearances and this, that, and the other. And you're like, well, wait a second. Yeah, there's not a lot of that. But there's some other cool gimmicky stuff. Have you heard of disco demolition? That happened here, not at this stadium, but across the street. So yeah, it's got to be. I mean, that's the conversation nationally. When I talk to other, baseball fans doing lockdown, and I'll talk down the lockdown, whatever, and they look at me and they're like, "Why are you, as a Chicago team? Why are you guys? You haven't signed somebody for $100 million yet." Like, why are you struggling always to bring in top tier premium talent? Why are you not just running away with this AL Central year after year as of late? It's so weak. And you have obvious answers as Sox fans that know it, but nationally, it's like they're wondering the same things we're wondering. So it's like, good, you get it. When I went to last week, we were off, right? And I went up to Galena with the family for a few days, and it was wonderful to get up there. Very relaxing. Love that area up there, Eagle Ridge Resort, and ran into a couple Sox fans, as I always do, because I'm wearing a Sox hat, Sox shirt, whatever. And this happens to, I'm sure, you and everybody else listening. It happens, right? And you go Sox, or you talk a little Sox, and we talked a little, stuff on the surface. This acquaintance here. And at the end, though, we got to the same thing, the same conclusion. And I love that he brought it up, not myself, but it's the obvious thing. He's like, really, nothing's going to change until definitely Hahn and Williams are gone. And then I'm like, well, even further, new ownership. And he's like, yeah. And then that's like, okay, good. We got to that. And that's usually how it goes. It's really dejecting at this point here of the year, when you have to sit and kind of reflect over this for a few days of, I don't know where you go. I don't know where this team goes. And it's really probably it's not going to look the same after August 1st. And you've got a guy that you don't trust making the decisions about that.
Yeah, and you think about it, it's like you don't understand where this team is at, where it's gonna go in the future. But there are still 3 months of the season left, and it's like the death march here of the rest of the baseball season. It's just so unenjoyable as a fan to just kind of know we don't have a shot. Our team is going to probably go in the tank here for the rest of the year. And you really have to I don't know about you, Nick, and I don't know if you get to this point or not, but I really have to almost convince myself not to care. Like, don't care so much about the loss today, because it doesn't, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really mean anything. Maybe it's even better if they lose. And, I know draft picks and things like that in baseball is a lot different than when you're talking about basketball and football. But what is this win today? Why am I going to be so invested? I remember I threw some book down the other day about watching the baseball game, and my kids looked at me like I'm a crazy person. I'm like, I'm a crazy person. And I'm looking at the scores when I'm not watching them, and I'm pissed off today when I check the scores and I see they're up 3-2 going into the ninth inning, and then the game gets tied. And I just turned to my 7-year-old. I said, it's over. He's like, well, they're tied going in the extra innings. I said, Gavin, this is the worst extra inning team I've ever seen in my entire life. Ever since they've changed the rules, I don't understand. I don't remember them winning too many extra inning games. They are awful in extra innings, just god awful. And I don't understand how they can be that bad. And getting back to my original point, I have to convince myself and talk myself into not getting angry at this team every day now for the next 3 months.
Well, I think, I'm definitely with you with that. And I know there's so many other people that are they're so sick about it, and I've had to kind of compartmentalize that as well and the apathy is where I don't want to go, where I just absolutely don't care about anything that happens. Because I think if you look the game within the game and you see good baseball being played, and it's just tough luck, and it's like, we played really well. We clicked on all cylinders. Pitching was good. Bullpen was good. Offense was there. Defense was there. I like the strategy. The decisions were made appropriately. It was a really well-played game, well-managed game. We just lost. I think, to me, I would say, well, it's just a matter of time, right? And that's what we've all been saying. Here's Giolito after Sunday's start. This is what he said after the Cardinals, after the Sunday Cardinals game, post game. It's been rough. I haven't been able to really fire on all cylinders. A lot of close losses, which hurt. But I have faith with a few adjustments, we can make a good run in the second half. We'll have to get really hot. But that's what it would take. If we were in another division, it would be pretty much over. That's the kind of thing that you hang your hat on. Pathetic that that's what you have to hang your hat on, is we're in a really bad division. But that thing of just a few adjustments, if we just did a couple things here, we might be able to get hot. And everybody talks about looking around the clubhouse and they see all the talent that's there. And look at this talent here. I think we're going to figure it out eventually. We've been hearing that forever. So going into the second half, I want to, can you make adjustments? Can you really make all of the adjustments? I don't think you can make all of them, but you might be able to make some of them. But what is this team going to look like then, after August 1st? Yeah. You have what, 2-3 weeks after the All-Star break? Lynn, depending on how they shuffle things, each starter is going to get maybe 3 starts before the deadline. So I don't know. Like, you don't have that much time to prove to anybody that, hey, we actually can make some noise, really make noise, not only in this division, but as Han would say, do damage in October. You don't have time for that. You've kind of lost that. And that's the weird thing with the Sox team, is they have some assets to sell off. So it's really, I'm looking at the season as like, this season is August 1st.
Yeah.
And then you kind of are just, playing it out.
Here's the conundrum I was just thinking about, because you talked about, the adjustments that can be made. We've talked for years about the straw that stirs the drink is Tim Anderson. Tim Anderson has been a shadow of himself for the past, let's call it 2 months. I don't know. Maybe that's not the right timeline.
I would say more. Yeah, this whole season has just been
maybe the whole season, but let's just say it's been really bad over the last couple of months here, and he's provided absolutely nothing. And this team has been a dead ass team. Let's be honest with you. If he were to come out after the break and resort back to the Tim Anderson we're used to and light a spark and this team starts to win again, then do you go, now his value is coming up high and it's time to get rid of this guy? Or is it, do you look at, because you said we're at eight games out?
8 games back out of the division, yeah.
You cut that in half and the team is actually playing well and Tim Anderson is being the person that we were hoping he was going to be as a leader of this team. Now you're let's play GM, Nick Murawski. You're 4 games back. And regardless of the fact that you're still going to be well under 500, you're back in this division and your seemingly best player, let's call him your best all-around player, maybe, I don't know, one of your best players is back to playing like he is capable of, but now his value is rising right before the trade deadline. Is that a move that you make? Or do you roll the dice and say, now this is exactly what we've been waiting for and hope that that 3-week span that he has is sustainable?
He's gone. If somebody makes me an offer on him, I would say, thank goodness, Tim Anderson, you got hot. We are going to be able to get some stuff for you. I just don't think it's enough. It would need, I would need out of the break, I would need the Sox to sweep the Braves. And then I think that's what I would need. You asked me to play. Oh my GM.
Goodness gracious! I almost had an accident in my pants
in Atlanta.
If they swept the Braves in Atlanta, my goodness gracious! I'm buying you a steak. And that's on. I will buy you just from Jewel. I mean, I'm just going to go to Jewel. I'm going to buy you a steak.
Here you go. You do
put it in your mailbox. I'm not taking you out for a meal or anything.
At least tell me you did put it in my mailbox so I can get it out.
Just check it every day. Check your mail.
All right, so they'd have to sweep Atlanta and then wherever else they're going, still on the road. They'd have to win 10 games out of the break. Okay, a collective effort, Pat. It's not just, one guy like Tim Anderson catching fire again, because then you still literally are dealing with Touquet Toussaint and maybe a Lambert Schulten situation. I don't know what's happening with Clevenger. Is he going to be back after the break? This Kopech thing seems like more rest and workload management than anything really going on, even though Grifol said that Kopech was grinding before they kind of put the brakes on him. That troubles me. I think you've got a stock like with Lucas Giolito where you just can't let him walk after the season for nothing.
Yep.
And he's been the best pitcher, the most reliable pitcher we've had this season. And you've got teams kicking the tires on Lance Lynn, namely the Texas Rangers. And if Lance Lynn has a couple good outings, I don't think you could take a hot Tim Anderson for 3 weeks while also Giolito and Lynn are pitching well, because I have to go with that as most likely going to happen because that has been happening. Giolito and Lynn have been pitching well. So I'm going to err on that. Then all of a sudden, Tim Anderson's going to wake up. But to your point, what if he does? I got to say, I've got so many assets here in starting pitching. I need the team to absolutely wake up. Now, if the team rips off 10 or 11 in a row, maybe 12 of 14 or something, and we're looking at 3 games back and we're around the deadline, then that's a huge decision to make. But I still think they're going to give up Giolito because I just don't think they're going to bring him back. And I've been conditioned like that as a fan to think that way with regards to starting pitching. Yeah. So
it's not going to be easy because you're in Atlanta, you're going to play the Mets, who have got to be the most disappointing team in all of baseball.
Right. There's more disappointments.
Somehow there's a more disappointing team than our White Sox, which a lot of people did not pick this team to finish higher than third. because of the way they played last year. You and I were obviously the cockeyed optimists, but there are more disappointing teams, namely the New York Mets and Minnesota and Cleveland. You've got the rest of this month, and you sprinkle in the Cubs there. So it's not like some type of daunting task outside of playing in Atlanta against the Braves right at the break. But this team traditionally will play down to its competition, Nick. The games in which in the series you look at and go, man, this really Oakland Exhibit A is what I would point to.
Yeah.
And this past series against a hapless, dead ass Cardinals team that you really should have won 2 out of 3. Those are you just play down to your competition all the time.
And, Chuck Garfien mentioned this stat about how the Sox have been in so many close one-run games, or they've lost the most one-run games in all of baseball or something. And on one end, you could say, oh, wow, they're in it. But that's what we talked about at the beginning of the season. This team has got to win on the margins. They've got to win close games, because I didn't think they were going to out-hit anybody, and pitching was a little questionable. I just thought with Grifol and his staff and everything that they were changing internally, supposedly, and guys, buying into that, they were going to grind out more wins. They were going to win those close games, those extra inning games. But the fundamentals and the approach and everything else that goes into it have cost those one-run games to be losses instead of wins. And that's the name of the game. That is the absolute name of the game. Good teams win those games. We have lost them.
Well, what did you text me the other day? I think it was Thursday night.
What do the White Sox do well? Do the White Sox do well?
I can't think of one thing that I'd say. Yeah, I remember years and years ago, or anytime you're like looking at matchups, like football matchups, and you're like, okay, this team, we're better on special teams than this team, so we're going to take the mark here. Our defense is not as good as their defense. They get so you go down like all this. The groupings, and you could look at the baseball teams the same way, and you just go, okay, well, they're going to starting pitching is better on that side of the field on most days than us. It just is. We've got some decent starting pitching, but with Dylan Cease not being the Dylan Cease we saw last year, we don't really have a quote unquote ace to the staff right now. Giolito's been really good. I wouldn't say he's ace lights out type guy. And the defense, we're never going to win on defense. We're never going to the bullpen has been, wow, that bullpen is really been disappointing.
Up and down, a lot of inconsistencies, and a varying of faces. You wouldn't recognize some of the guys right now, and you didn't expect a Brian Shaw to be in there. And good comments coming in about pitching, absolutely. And Sydney, great to see you at the game. On Saturday, as always, a good conversation. Unfortunately, veering on the negative side as what White Sox baseball is. Sox are 0-9 when Sox starters have 10 plus strikeouts.
How is that?
A team? I mean,
how is that possible?
I don't know how that's possible. But doing things well, I think the Sox lead all of baseball in strikeouts, and they're up there in taking the ball. In games started by start. I think Lynn, Cease, and Gio, they haven't missed a start. They take the ball every fifth day, and they've logged innings. And Sox pitching's up there with innings as well and strikeouts. And you'd say, well, that should help you out in certain ways. But I think the offense has been so bad that it pulls those pitching numbers down with it. Mm-hmm. I think they're worse off right now in a lot of offensive categories by a lot than they were last year. And we thought that was such a disappointment. So, what they do well, aside from those items with pitching, I can't put my finger on it. It hasn't happened with the consistency to even label it or mention it. And we've been asking that for a long time this year. And that's what you'll scratch your head over this all-star break and say, I don't know the path. There's some hard decisions to get to. Unfortunately, the front office is still going to be in place to make those decisions. They're going to have the keys. Now, your guy and my guy, Sylvie from, of course, Waddle and Sylvie on ESPN 1000, he went off after this game on Sunday, and Hahn needs to go. Williams needs to go. And Jerry should look in at Theo Epstein and get Theo in here to do things. And what I say to that is Jerry doesn't want anybody telling him how the things should be run. This is how a good baseball teams do it. This is how organizations do it. And you're going to not only have to just put me in place, but you got to change all these other things and how those are done. Jerry doesn't want to hear that.
No,
he does not want that type of voice at all.
And Sylvie says that from a perspective of a huge Bulls fan that is fed up with Jerry Reinsdorf as well. He knows that, but he's just saying what I think would be the smart move. And Sylvie just got back from Italy. He's still probably drunk on wine and pounds of pizza. So God bless him. Welcome back from Italy.
Pounds.
He just, every picture I saw of him, he's eating more pizza.
Yeah.
He is pizza man after all. That would be the smart thing. But yeah, you're right, because that's too much control. That would have to be given to a Theo Epstein. And oh, by the way, lots of money. You're going to be paying lots of money to a Theo Epstein, who's, I think, got bigger aspirations than running a team anymore. I think his view is continuing to move up the ladder within the league.
I thought ownership. I thought he might even wanted to get into the ownership.
Oh, well, that would be great if he wanted to buy the team from Jerry, but that would be.
Well, he'd have to be on some sort of collective committee, and I don't know. Maybe he saved his money and made good investments. I'm not sure.
It's an interesting comment, and it's almost like a pipe dream. Do you remember? Oh gosh, who did we have on that? I asked, who would be
Herb Lawrence? You asked Herb
when I
Lawrence.
asked Herb. Yeah. And who did he say? He said
Mark Cuban.
Mark Cuban. That's who he would pick as the next owner of this team, this person running a show. But I think even he knew that's a pipe dream. That's not happening, because Jerry's, I don't know how it goes in Major League Baseball, but it's the boys club, and they talk about who gets into the club next, right? And they try and keep all these big spending, aggressive guys out, and then somebody sneaks in somehow, and then everybody's mad about the way they run their team. And then it's like, well, we got to clamp down. We can't let guys like this in. So Jerry doesn't want that to happen with his own club, but maybe at some point he just goes, I'm out anyway. What the hell do I care? I've made money hand over fist with this team. He can talk all he wants about, well, you don't really make money owning sports franchises. Then why have you been doing it for 40 years? Why have you been doing this for 40 years if you're not making money off of it? Don't lie to us and tell me you're not making money off of your sports franchises, because that is a bunch of hippy dippy BS.
That is some BS right there.
Yeah.
What would Hawk say? This is where I just miss Hawk so much in the broadcast. What he wouldn't say, he'd be silent.
No, yeah, he'd be done. That'd be it. It'd be, oh my gosh, the vodka would be yes. And what's the post game show?
Sox just lost another one, and we'll be back.
The ball wouldn't even have landed in Oakland. And he's already talking about the post-game show.
He's already out.
By the time they come back from commercial break, he's in the freaking car on the way out. Oh, my
goodness. Just on the Dan Ryan heading back to Indiana. I just want it for just a series. Bring him back for a series. Let him just go nuts. Like, have himself a day. I don't even care if anybody else is in the booth with him. Well, it really wouldn't matter, because he wouldn't let anybody talk anyways. He's got a lot that he needs to get off his chest. But that would make things fun again. If you want to bring back some folks to listen, and honestly, if you want to bring back people into the stands, just make a change. Put Ozzy in there. Just say, you know what? Have a day, Ozzy. Just go ahead, man.
Yeah.
This one didn't work out Han's way. We're going in a different route. You would get people into that building, I think. And I know there's a lot of people that still have problems with Ozzy, and I get it. And it's maybe it's not the smartest thing that should be done. But can it be any worse? At least we'd be having some fun with it.
I think you'd have at least some players held accountable. I think right now,
which they wouldn't be happy about, of course.
I don't think maybe once in a while there's some accountability thrown around with, when Robert wasn't running hard and he got benched and that kind of thing. But, I think there's a lot that can be said about managers that kind of have that blow up to the press, right? Because that for the most part, at least when Ozzy did it and he'd blow up to the press, he did the same thing in the clubhouse. There's no surprise. I don't know that that Pedro has that in him to do that, to really get in the face of these guys. Maybe they don't respect him.
I don't think they respect him.
No. And I think it was posed to Jesse Rogers this past week about, could Pedro be one and done? And Jesse said, no. Jesse said, I don't think that you can, given what has gone on, pin this all on him. But if you and I are sitting here talking about changes that are going to be made and trades that are going to be happening, it's not going to get any better this year. And seemingly, I don't know what the future holds for next year, if this team can be any good. So how are you? Is he just the placeholder for the next guy to be named later?
If Hahn goes, if this year gets really bad, and I don't even know if there's a number or if there are certain chants or signs or billboards or T-shirts, or I don't know what it really takes for Jerry to get so fed up and just say, you know what, thank you, but it's time to move on. Yeah. I just can't do this anymore. You've meant a lot to me and the organization, but we got to go a different direction. And Hahn leaves, and maybe Williams just will always be right next to Jerry, but Hahn goes. Well, Grifol was Hahn's hire, so then Grifol goes as well. In my mind, it's just like, Jerry's gonna have to eat that money. I think it was a 3-year contract. You're gone. And what the smart thing would be is the new GM would be able to have that hire as a new manager.
You would think so. It should be a package deal, and it should be somebody, but somebody's going to be a sacrificial lamb at the end of the year, Nick. And I just don't.
What if there's not? What if there's not? That's what gets me right in my stomach. What if there's not? And it's just, you know what? Things didn't work out the way we wanted to, but we've got an idea of how we can fix it, and that kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
I'm just, but you've been around this organization just as long as I have.
Yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't be too far off if they said something like that.
Just going to run it back again for next year. I don't know. You change that. Somebody's getting the axe though. Somebody has to. Is it the head trainer?
Daryl Boston might finally get the axe.
I'll buy you another steak and put it in your mailbox.
This time you have to tell me that there's 2 steaks sitting in your mailbox. Okay,
they've been rotting. I get it
if you just want to sneak
maggots.
one into the mailbox and you're like, you'll figure it out. But when there's 2 in the mailbox, you got to at least tell me there's 2 now.
If Daryl at the end of the year, and then it changes. Wouldn't that be hilarious if all of a sudden Daryl Boston's gone and this team is fundamentally sound, catching the ball, and it's like, fudge, this whole time it was Daryl Boston.
It was Daryl. He was working something inside. He was corrupting this whole organization.
Always the last person you suspect, Daryl Boston.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, man. I'm excited for the home run derby. I really am. Frank Thomas, your only White Sox winner back in 1995, ballpark of Arlington, the old Texas ballpark. Those Frank Thomas years, man. Can we just think back to when that was really awesome?
Just turn back the clock a little bit. Can we go back to an alternate reality where 94 didn't happen and they finished the year just to see how that team would have played out? I don't know.
Yeah, I would love the last Comiskey guys to do a 93, 94 thing. Definitely 94, and try to get some perspective from some players and maybe they have gone on the record before. I'm sure they had, but more that just kind of talked a little bit about what could have been and the thoughts and feelings after that. And maybe they don't want to because of a whole, labor union thing. I don't know, but that one really hurt. 2000 hurt. There's been a lot of hurt. Simple as that.
And hence why we do this every Sunday to
exactly.
give ourselves some therapy and try and pick ourselves up and get ready for 3 months of hell.
Well, as soon as training camp starts for the Bears, though, it is all attention is on the Chicago Bears. So you just know
what, and rightfully so. I mean, why else would you give? You know what I would say and this is nothing against you, Nick, but I'll say it to all White Sox fans that get upset about that. Give everybody an opportunity to pay attention to you. Then give everybody an opportunity to talk about you. Give everybody an opportunity to write about you. give people an opportunity to listen to podcasts that talk about the White Sox and stop being, just pay attention to us because we're baseball. I'm just like, sorry, Charlie. The football's come around and it's king. I got news for you.
Football is king. The Bears are king in this city. And if the White Sox continue the way they're going, which all signs point to that, Bears will absolutely take over. And that goes for everything. It's how things have always gone. Even when the White Sox were really good, it's tough. It's tough because there's always this drama that happens, up where they were Olivet Nazarene, where they were having their training camps. Like something happens there. There's a receiver that, had a great catch, and it's like that's front page at training camp. It is what we have to deal with as Sox fans. So I'm banking on not getting that steak from you. But if there's a sweep of Atlanta and we get to talk about that next week, that'll be at least something fun.
That would be fun. And I would actually take you out to somewhere to dine on a steak where I wouldn't just leave it in your mailbox. Maybe Steak and Shake. I hear that's a fine place.
Yeah.
And a shake. And a shake. Nick.
Yeah. You can have a little bit of both. That sounds like a good deal. I'm up for that. I think it's just spoiling other teams. They're going to say, oh, Sox are coming to town. This should be easy. And we try to take care of business. Wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah, that'd be great. Right. I can't wait.
Okay. Pat, always a pleasure, buddy. Always a pleasure doing this with you. Very therapeutic.
Yeah, Nick, it was good to see you. It was nice. Thank you for the week off. I appreciate it. But back at the grind, I appreciate it, brother. And let's do it again next Sunday.
Folks, thank you so much for joining in on the YouTube channel and everywhere you get the audio version. It's absolutely everywhere. It'll drop Sunday night as it does. We're on Twitter at Good Guys TB. We've got a Facebook fan page. And thank you so much. This is our 5th year doing this, 5th season. And we'll continue no matter what. That's for sure. Can't always promise the content will be great in terms of wins and losses, but hopefully entertaining. For Pat Hester, I am Nick Murawski. Until next time, go Sox.